Gentlemen, you are both drunk on cosmic wine.
Welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Mark Sylvester.
And I'm Dr. Richard Schulman. This is Alt Psych.
Thanks again for joining us. Oh, Rich, isn't that the same shirt you were wearing last week?
I like this shirt.
Oh,
and
wait a
I
minute.
like the jacket. Florida's the only, Florida is the only place in the world that you have to wear like a jacket or a sweater to go inside.
Yeah, I don't get it.
So I like this jacket. It's the Martin Guitar Company. It says so on the back, but
what are the chances that you and I would both be wearing the same thing as we did last week? It's weird,
apparently
right?
100%.
Huh, it's funny how that happens.
Yeah, well, it's a time machine. We're good to go.
What are we talking about?
I understand that we have a subscriber that wanted us to talk about us.
Yeah, what the good doctors do to care for themselves. So I've got some ideas there, and do you have some ideas?
Oh yeah, I go back all the way back into the time machine. What did they say? Into the way back, Sherman. My father, when I was a kid, my father used to say to me, when you play your guitar, I don't worry about your mental health. But when you don't play, I really worry about you, Rich. And as it turns out, music is the great healer for me. I think people,
you both listen to it and you perform it. So what's more healing?
Well, I think that they're different. Now, for me, live music, going out to see somebody play, it's much, much better than listening to a record, even in a great stereo. There's something about the performer's energy, the performer's emotion. I don't know how else to put it. It clears my soul when the great ones, and I always go when a great one comes to the area, I make sure that we go. There's a guitar player named Tommy Emmanuel that I love, and we went down to Key West before the COVID thing hit. Of course we didn't know it was going to hit, and we saw him twice up close, and it was like I felt a cleansing. Now, the other part of this that I find so fascinating is being in this stay-at-home, the continual hammering of, you're going to die, or grandma's going to die, or somebody's going to die, and don't go outside. The first opening was a concert by a friend of ours named Sean Hopper, who's just a fabulous guitar player up in St. Petersburg. He was playing in St. Pete. So we got tickets, and of course there was social distancing, 12 tables in the place. And we're friendly with Sean. He's a great guy, an amazing player. When he started to play, I wanted to cry. I felt so good. It just went right into my heart. And the idea that I was starving for this kind of music. Now, I can play on my own, but I actually get the most when I play with the band. Right. There's an organic, my band Dreamwalkers, and we're working on a new album now, and it is just, it's great. As Miles Davis once said, most fun I ever had with my clothes on. The band becomes an organic whole. The energy that runs around when you can feel where everybody's going is just spectacular. And I feel so much better when I'm playing and when I'm playing with the band. The other thing is when we would play out, I couldn't go to sleep. I was so energized when I was done. And I'm not sure we're picking up on the energy of the crowd. That's possible. I haven't really analyzed it. But I would be like really tired, but couldn't sleep because I had so much energy.
Just from the performance itself. I mean, I kind of relate for performing when I was younger in the orchestra. I played violin, or if I played piano as well. I know that energy. It's very hard to describe. It's maybe what a runner's high feels like, but it's just that it flows. There's a certain resonance in the music, the emotion.
If you think about it, that you take an A chord, sounds pretty happy. An A minor not quite so happy, sounds kind of sad. Take a D ninth, sounds kind of whimsical. If you ask 100 people, what emotion is this? Most of them will say happy. You ask them, what emotion is this? Most of them will say sad. So the vibrational nature of these things is very, very powerful. And for me, it's really amazingly so. You know, Pythagoras was looking for those golden vibrational ratios a couple thousand years ago. It's just that somehow for me, the music, even sad music, will make me feel better.
Yeah, it's about more movement and ability to vibrate or attenuate a pattern that you're stuck in, you know, or else you wouldn't be seeking therapeutic music. I mean, I find that fascinating too, that, you know, my favorite band is Pink Floyd, of course, and I can listen to just a few bars literally and feel my state change.
I took my son years ago. I took my younger boy to see Bruce Springsteen, and he was 12. You know, Springsteen hits the stage, and it's an explosion. You know, it's energy is all over the place, and he jumped up and started dancing like he'd been doing it his whole life. So after the second song, I looked down at him, and it's that beautiful little face, and he looks up at me with this gigantic smile and says, "I'm so glad we're here, Dad." And I said, well, you know, it's because, you know, they have the big TV screen and the speakers. I said, kind of like Disney. And he goes, oh, he got real serious. "Oh, no, Dad. This is an amusement park where music is the ride." And I went, he got it. Life is an amusement park where music is the ride. And that's going to be the title of our next album, by the way. They're going to throw that in. For me, music is not optional. I have to have it. It clears my soul, you know, especially, and whenever, like I said, whenever one of the great ones comes to town, I'll move heaven and earth to go, because it clears my soul. I feel differently. And you talked about Pink Floyd. My favorite band was The Who. And I went to see them, the first time I saw them I was 16, 1969. I went in one person, I came out another person. It was literally like falling in love. And I remember saying to my buddy who insisted that I go to this thing, thank you, David, I didn't know music could be like that. I had never experienced anything like it. It was live.
I think people need to kind of return to that, because I agree that's something very powerful for me too. And I don't perform anymore. And I don't really go to that much live stuff. I will, of course, go now and then. I like musicals. We went and saw Les Miserables with my family, which was lovely. But I do a little bit different things, I guess, to help me care for myself, heal myself. One of the best ways to get better in here is to get out of here. And what helps me get outside of myself are these babies. Working with my hands, because when my hands are going, my brain is usually shut off, at least the pathologic part of it. So, you know, I work as an engineer, and we do a lot of projects, but most of them are very hand heavy. So, you know, metal fabrication, hand welding. You know, we're building trailers right now. We're doing a stainless trailer, rebuilding boats. I love to water ski. Play volleyball.
When you go back for a minute to the mechanical things, when you're doing those mechanical things with your hands, do you kind of go into an altered state? Almost like a moving meditation?
Yeah. And I mean, how do you measure that? It's sort of like being in love. No one can tell you. You just know it, balls to bones. Quote.
I get that sometimes from just walking in nature, and when I get into the yoga bug, when I start really getting into yoga makes me high. I mean, I'm in the zone when I do yoga.
Yeah, anything that has the power to dilate time or warp time tells you that you're outside of that locked construct that we all spend the majority of our time in. So anytime you can kind of free yourself, I think it's a little bit like taking the red pill.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's also, you know, you go beyond judgment at those moments. You're just kind of hanging out with the energy of it. I know with yoga was very important to me because actually because I sucked at it. I didn't have to be the point man, and my only competition was to get better. You know, and I would laugh at myself a lot, which was very healing also, by the way. You know, yoga is not, you don't have a yoga Olympics, at least I haven't seen one yet, you know, where you compete to who can twist themselves into a bigger pretzel or a better pretzel. I just found that I wanted to feel good, and the yoga would relax me. It also had the added effect of making me stand up straighter, which my mother liked a lot. Um, she said
What
to
a,
my yoga teacher, all these years I've been trying to get him to stand up straight. You finally got him to stand up straight. Um, you know, the movement, very, very important for me. I've got to move. I'm one of those weirdos that doesn't relax unless I'm stimulated. So for me to sit around and just meditate doesn't work. I need a moving meditation. Are you able to meditate?
yeah, one of the things that I like, well, regarding movement, you know, I like Tony Robbins' statement that emotion is created by motion. And so there are many times people are searching for an emotion, but they're waiting for it to just appear. And by actually moving, getting up, like you said, getting outside, walking, you actually can create that state and feel that emotion that if you obviously wouldn't have gotten off your butt, if you wouldn't have made the motions, gone through the motions, you wouldn't have generated that emotion. So it's just a nice way that he says how to change your state, but in a way that people actually make the change and do it. Because a lot of times people have always heard the right things, but how effective were they if you don't change your behavior? So I like emotion being created by emotion. I tend to think of inspiration coming from meditation, you know, whether that's a clarity, whether I'm inspired because I have more control over my monkey mind than I feel like I do the vast majority of the day. I think it's a good uh, activity, but a lot of people meditate, like you said, when they're playing music, or they meditate when they're doing Tai Chi or yoga. They're in that altered state, that meditative state, the observer. Um, you know, even working on a car, I can get there.
I love what you said, the red pill, you know, because the Matrix provided me with a beautiful metaphor for what I believe these techniques, I don't even know if they're techniques, these activities is probably a better way to put it, have on our psyches. Remember the scene where Keanu Reeves slows the bullets down, then he kind of pulls them out of the air?
Whoa.
That's a metaphor for life. Life comes at us hard and fast with a lot of bullets. And our job is to slow that down so we can pull the bullets out of the air and not get hit by them. And I think that's what some of these things, the yoga, meditation, music, and by the way, you know, when you go to a rock and roll concert, and I'm a rock and roll kid, you get up and dance. You know, the music moves you. You know, one of the lines from my song, saw the boss get in his groove. He showed me new ways I could move. Life is an amusement park. Music is the ride. There is motion connected to a lot of these things. One of the things that really helps me tremendously is comedy. When I feel down, I'll dial up old Rodney Dangerfield tapes, and I will laugh. I'll still laugh at jokes I heard 30 years ago. It's funny. And there's a release of energy. There's a movement, you know, that is very, very therapeutic.
And it's hard to be laughing and uh, distracted or fearful or, feeling negative at the same time. And
You know,
so,
Viktor Frankl actually talked about that in Man's Search for Meaning. He said he would try to, he's in a concentration camp, he tried to get the guard to laugh. Because when the guard laughed, they were all on the same level. And I think it's very powerful.
yeah, and that might be another tool that we both discussed before, kind of selectively surrounding yourself with positivity. I mean, I think of myself as the conductor of an orchestra, in a very gestalty way. And right now, the band's a little bit unruling. We got rioting over here in this section, and we got COVID over here in this section. And so we're forced to turn certain knobs up and down to really dial in what we want to hear as the concertmaster of our own lives. And so it requires a lot more of an active role to selectively surround yourself with positivity, to schedule that time for yourself for fun, and proactively avoid negativity.
And that
Now,
includes positive people.
absolutely. And it also includes patience, which one of the things that you say sustains you, as it does me, is loving your work. So I wanted to
Absolutely.
touch you on a little bit that, unfortunately, life is happening, and our patients are going through what they would if there weren't so many other factors in the world negatively affecting them. So I guess for people to understand that we don't take home the negativity of our day, or the frustrations, or the suffering, or the fear, or the losses, or whatever we're working on with patients. It's not like we want to avoid them. If anything, we want to share all of the work that we've done with our own selves, kind of emotionally and mentally and spiritually, but also intellectually with our training, so that we can help train other people what it looks like and feels like to naturally gravitate towards positive people, positive situations, avoid negatives when you can. But when you absolutely get dealt a turd sandwich, when you get that 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag moment in life that a lot of people are experiencing, you know what to do with that then as well.
I think of my work as hard fun. I love the courage of the people who come here. And I love figuring out, kind of how they tick. And working with them is a lot like martial arts or dance. And it really, it's a great, the word challenge is overused, but it's really an interesting gig. It does take a lot of energy, and I am unbelievably tired at the end of the day. But I want to learn something every day. I think sometimes the patients are my teachers. I try not to be stuck in one way of looking at the world. And my old friend Kat Taylor used to say, Rich, you don't learn something every 3 or 4 days, you get squirrely. So crack the books or something, will you? Learning is a joy for me. Learning new things.
Keeps you constantly moving. And,
yeah,
I think it goes along with what we were talking about before, and changing the visuals. And whether that's getting outside of your house and having dinner on the back porch, or taking whatever trip that you can, in as circumstances allow, or spending a staycation at home, or formal Friday, which was catching on around the country, getting dressed up to go nowhere on Friday nights, but just be with your family all dressed up and have a nice dinner at home. That's changing the visuals.
yeah.
That really makes a difference.
And I think it's actually very important to have a connection with your partner. I find that very supportive, and allows me to just be myself, which is incredibly healing when I don't have to put on any airs for anybody. And my partner is really beautiful when it comes to that. And then I really believe having good friends like you, Dr. Sylvester. I believe 4 quarters are better than 100 pennies, you know,
But
you know,
100 grand is even tastier.
well, yeah, there's that, but if you know what I mean, we're mixing the metaphor, you know, your friendship is beyond price.
I just
So
like peanuts better.
there you go. The the idea here is to have supportive people around. They're not your therapists exactly. They're just people you can hang with. You know, my idea of a friend is when you say you got a body in the backyard, they ask how big a shovel they should bring. But you know,
You got better friends than me.
yeah, I'll lend them to you. Yeah, well, I don't know. I know my friends are fantastic, and they've been lifelong, many of them.
I
And you
also,
got to make an effort. One of the things that this COVID-19 thing did was it pushed me into the direction I'm going to connect with these people on a regular basis. I'm not letting it slide. So that has actually invigorated some of those deep old friendships. You know, I mean, it's the kind of thing we wouldn't see each other for a couple of years, and then it'd be, you know, boom, we'd be back together again. But now we're going to meet, you know, a couple times a month on Zoom, and you know, just hang out like we always do. It's very, very nourishing.
yeah,
You
that's a
know,
good, I was going to say that's a good example of what I call leaning into resistance, because if there's somebody like a friend that you hadn't reached out to in a long time, but you know, for some reason you have like a resistance to call them out of the blue, or it's like, well, it's the pandemic. What am I going to do? Say, hey, do you want to go out to eat because the restaurants were closed or whatever? One other thing that I do is I observe when I'm encountering my own resistance. And then I pay attention to it and I say, okay, why is there resistance there? And oftentimes I don't really have a good conscious explanation for it. And so I'll say, okay, I'm avoiding reaching out to someone who I know makes me feel better when I interact with them, an old friend, a college roommate, or whatever. And I don't have a good reason for it. And so I catch myself with this sort of passive resistance. And then I lean into it and I will say, okay, because I'm doing that, I've recognized that, I now will go out of my way and to ensure that I'm going to pick up the phone and reach out and just say, hey, you know, was thinking about you. That's about it. How have things been? Isn't this crazy? Hey, we should Skype sometime. That has been helpful to me too. It's not quite like Jim Carrey and Yes Man or whatever, but it's seeing where you have those little resistance to things like, oh, well, I don't really feel like going out to exercise. That's probably a sign that you need it more than when it's a routine and you're going every week to the gym or whatever.
I think one other thing that I would add, that my mentor, you know, rest in peace, he's gone now, but he's with me, was positive thinking. He was a mess near the end of his life, and probably the oldest 58-year-old man in history, because he had so much shrapnel in his body and he had been shot in the war and he had all kinds of things going on. Brilliant, amazingly brave man, great patriot. Anyway, I would say, how you doing? He always said excellent. Like his arm could be hanging by a thread. You know, I he was having surgery. I went to the hospital, to check in with him, and he was a mess. How you doing, Arnold? He go, excellent. I said, how is that possible? So he says, I've trained my mind that when I say the word excellent, things get excellent. And I can get through anything if I think positively. So I started consciously doing that. And it was probably one of the best things I ever did, you know. And when right before he died, I knew he was in trouble because I said, "How you doing?" And he said, "Very good." And I went, "Oh man, that's not so good." He didn't say excellent. So he was still, you know, he gave me a message there that things were not so good. But having positivity is very, very powerful. And, you know, I think it might be the most powerful of any of these things that I've spoken about, and you have to speak for you. For me, being positive, I mean, I have a wonderful girlfriend, I have great friends, I have a great colleague that I work with here. Having that positive feel for things, you know, it's almost like sports psychology that you've got to get your athlete to think positively, you know, because it breeds success and it breeds optimal performance, and that makes us feel good.
Absolutely.
We're performing at high levels in whatever we do.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I actively program and meta program my human biocomputer up here, the 3 pounds of goo I've got sloshing around in there that gets me to work and home every day. You know, it's a Boolean choice. You know, do I want to live a improved existence, have an improved quality of existence, or not? Yes or no? Well, if the answer is yes, then what are you willing to do? And one of the things is be unapologetically positive. Now, I don't think I'm the most positive person in the world, but I try to always take a positive slant on things. And that's something that's helped tremendously.
Out of patience, give me this. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, yeah.
This is part of being positive. She said to me, you know, I got something for you, and gave me this thing. She said, "Stop apologizing for being brilliant." Well, I didn't realize I was doing it. So that was good information. But I did think, okay, I'm not going to be an egotist, but I'm going to live inside my own skin happily. I'm going to have the confidence that I can take on whatever comes into the office, but also that life will tend to work out if we think about it positively and work with the energies that we have. I mean, hey, I landed, you know, in your office. That turned out pretty good for me, buddy.
Well, it's turned out pretty good for everybody. Probably the last thing that I got for healing myself is it's still on the positivity train, but it's really because, you know, be positive is really a cliche. It really is. But it's such a profoundly important thing that the cliche almost serves to miss its point. And I think the same is true for having an attitude of gratitude. Because if you always are grateful, if you're always every single day counting your blessings, so to speak, if you're looking at all of the things that you're grateful, you're focused on that, and you cannot simultaneously be focused on the inequities of your life or someone else's life. It's critical. It doesn't mean you don't care about those things. It means you care about yourself first so that you can care about those other things. Because right now, that scale is tipped so topsy-turvy that people are losing themselves. They don't recognize themselves. They're getting anxiety, depression, irritability, anger, confusion. There's so many emotions that we gotta, you know, keep it simple. And these are what work for me. And I think yours are similar.
Well, I'm reminded of a depressed patient that I had, and I asked her what she was grateful for, and she said nothing. And I said, well, how about toilet paper? Who knew with COVID-19 and what a prophecy that would be, you know? How about toilet paper? Well, we don't have these things. They kind of become a little more important. We get to see them. And little things, I found that little kindnesses can be very profound at the right moment. And that's all about being positive. be positive, be kind. If you can't, I think the Dalai Lama said, whenever possible, be kind. Then he said, it's always possible.
Mm.
And to me, that's part of kindness. Now, look, we're human beings. We're going to have good days and not so good days. We're aiming for a certain goal here. So, you set the target high, you'll hit it more often than if you don't set, or you get closer. I don't know what the metaphor is exactly. But we're aiming to live better lives. And part of that, there's a whole Buddhist teaching about non-attachment, which is connected to all of this stuff. I studied with a Buddhist scholar for a couple of years. He was a very cool guy, actually. And what he said was simple and yet incredibly profound. He said, people don't understand Buddhism. They think it means you can't have a nice car or a nice house. You can have all that stuff. Just don't get attached to it, because it's going to go away at some point.
Well, that's great advice. And I want to close with a Buddhist quote myself from the great Ty Webb in Caddyshack. But it goes along with what we're talking about. And that's literally, see your future. Be your future. Make your future, Danny. That's the challenge that awaits us all. So until next week, thank you, everybody.
All right.
I think
Love you, brother.
I think Rich hung up on us.
No. I didn't hang. My phone had a little glitch. So
All right.
we'll see you next week. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Be well.
In the future, we will be there.
All right.
All
Bye,
right.
everybody.
See ya. Bye-bye.